I'm just one. I'm just one. That's the truth. I'm just one. And I think God would have got it done if I hadn't come.
It's hard to sell a dream. You know, you can think of things you'd probably like to see, but they're just kind of a dream or a thought you had. But to put it down on paper and start putting up stones and bricks and mortar, then everything changes.
The only answers for folks who were this handicapped in those days were nursing homes, county homes, and state institutions, and none of those could solve these people's needs and wishes.
And you'd see these old people get up in the morning, go out on the porch, sit in a rocking chair after they had their breakfast and rock. They were doing nothing. There was no reason for them to get up.
It was very obvious that we needed to do something that wasn't being done.
I was so impressed with the vision that Bill had.
I wrote down, on the last night I was in the hospital, I wrote down a lot of things. And I believe that I was told to share this with 16 people, and I was given their names. And the next night when I got home, before I went home, of course, I called them and invited them, and they all came, I think, except one. And one was the mayor of Mason City, and these weren't all, so to speak, Christian people or religious people necessarily.
Let's see, Mark wasn't very old when we started looking for a place for him, but we didn't want to put him in an institution where they warehoused him. And then we went to Martin Luther Home, and I think I told you before, they were booked up several years in advance, and that's where the first idea came into my head, maybe we ought to build our own place, if the demand's that great.
And of course, those people, how much I don't know, but I'm sure they passed information on to others, and somehow this began to spread.
It wasn't too long after that, Murley and Bill Otterman and Bob Replogle come out to our house, and we had a little meeting. And Bob said, we talked about building our own and stuff like that, you know. Of course, Bob Replogle is he thinks big. I mean, he did at that time. And he decided he'd go over and talk to some of his medical friends in Mason the next day, and he did.
There was probably only 8 or 9 of us to start with, and we all had our own ideas of what a handicap village should be. And most of them were wrong, because we didn't know any better.
There had to be somebody helping us that wasn't at the table when we had the board meeting. Because, man, we didn't know anything. We didn't, you know, you haven't tried anything.
And I was busy as a pastor, and that was my primary work. So my involvement was more or less as the mouthpiece out there, the big mouth.
It was always a Christian organization, and there were always Christian things behind it. And I remember them saying early on, they have to have something to get up for in the morning.
We tried to keep it Christ-centered all the way along. And, well, you pretty much have to. Murley was our president of the board.
In the beginning, it was tough. I suppose maybe it's always tough, but we always think our time was tough.
And sometimes we kind of felt, what are we doing? When are we going to get anything done?
None of us knew anything about building a facility for the retarded or handicapped. We had no idea. We knew kind of what we'd like to have.
Originally, we all had the idea that the village was going to be a village. It was going to be a town. It would be a place where we had a market, a grocery store, you might say.
It was an interesting experience. I never got up one morning for a long time without wondering what God was going to do that day to advance what I called his program.
I had 600 pictures that I'd taken over in Germany. So I was asked to give demonstrations and share ideas. Oh, I must have been as far away as Spencer.
Well, I talked to Mark Arneson one day, and I told him what we were doing. And he said, well, we don't want to take that out of Clear Lake. And I said, well, I'd sure like to see it built here.
We looked at different places. There was a place down in Hampton where we could have had. And this was a sister of John Hanson. And she offered to give us the house and the property. And we just felt, well, that wasn't it.
Then he got on a fund drive to buy the land, and he purchased this land from a Newberger's. And well, then we had something we could show people or tell people we had.
With his support and all the other businessmen, we got along real well.
And then we heard about this fellow down in Beatrice, Nebraska, his name was Don Boyer. And someone had talked to him, or someone had talked to someone who knew him. And so 2 or 3 people, as I recall, went down to visit with him, and they could come back, and they said, he's the man.
My experience with Don Boyer is that he was the right man at the right time for the right job. He was a well-spoken, convincing person, and he was just the right one that we needed at that time.
And we had a lot of faith in Don. And he was taking us down the right road. We were smart enough to figure that out. And he was kind of calling the shots.
You know, we didn't even have enough money to pay him for the first month. We didn't have enough money. We had to borrow money to get him here. I mean, it was just so many things, so many. It was amazing.
I didn't think it would ever be group homes and facilities in Mason City, Eagle Grove, and then we had Sheldon come over here and set up their own, and I had no idea it was going to get that big.
Only a God who was concerned could have done for us what he did. And look at this village. It started out with a loan of $500, and from then on, it grew by gifts.
God, like always, he goes ahead and does things. We don't understand it. We don't know why, but he does it.
So many people would keep a person home and almost out of the public eye. And when the village began to form, they began to see, oh, these are people. These are people. And it's been a great thing to see how these people develop, when they come, and this change in name from Handicap Village to Opportunity Village. It was just thrilling for me to see, and it was a wonderful thing.
The residents work and earn money, and I'm sure that gives them a pride in accomplishing things, and people are not just giving them things or doing things to entertain them. They are really a part of society, and I think that's been a very big plus in the changes since 1971.
Well, I get very weepy when I think about the people who I knew that were here, and what they have to put up with every day. You and I take life for granted.
something, I'll tell you, when I think back. It'd be kind of fun to do it again. Knowing what I know now. I gotta tell you, it wouldn't take as long to get another one going, because I know the shortcuts now.